time, it's my pleasure to welcome Tony Politano.
Thank you. I took a picture because I just sent my last tweet of the morning. Those of you that are following any of this on Twitter, I did do the pound TDWI cough so that somebody could see that. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming this morning. I don't want to see any sleepy eyes out there because I think some of my friends here can tell you I have about the craziest travel story from yesterday. I went from end to end of the country. I live about 100 miles. I live on the coast of Maine, about 100 miles from Canada, and I came all the way down here. So we went all the way across the country, end to end. And without going into a lot of detail, number of canceled flights, of which the last leg was getting on a car from LAX last night, and driving down here and getting in at about 3 o'clock, and getting some sleep. And then add to that in November, I made the valiant effort to give up caffeine. So I've been living without caffeine since November. So if anybody out there looks a little sleepy, I'm not going to put up with that. I think I've got the worst of them all. So yeah, I did want to talk about Chief Performance Officer today. And I want to start out with a quote from a somewhat obscure 1990s band called Delametra. Anybody know this band at all? Yeah, there's a couple of us out there, hardcore. But if you look at the quote, you want to throw away the old you, but the old you is old enough to know you can't make it better. I mean, that's what we're faced with in so many of our organizations. I want to change, but why bother? I don't have to, it's not going to, I've been through this. I've been through BI, I've been through data warehousing, I've been through all the different gyrations that I could do with this. And, it never really caught on at the C-level, or the great vision that we had never really caught on. Now, these awards show that it can actually happen. But a lot of us are just sitting out there saying, it's not going to change. So why bother? Let's just go through the motions. Let's do technology type of stuff. But if you think about it, the Chief Performance Officer, and later on in the presentation, I'm going to tell you who Chief Performance Officers really are in your organization. But like we said during the introduction, I published this book about in 2003. I keynoted the presentation here right after the book came out, talking about some of these concepts. And it got real quiet for a while. And then it was in January, I was at a client in Houston, and I woke up at the hotel, and then I was looking at, just looking at the news, and then on comes this thing about, President Obama announces a Chief Performance Officer. And within 20 minutes, I get these phone calls from Fox News, CNN, all these other things, because nobody knows what a Chief Performance Officer really is. And if you actually went before Obama made the announcement and you Googled Chief Performance Officer, I was the top 14 out of 15 that were there. It wasn't something that really caught on. But if you look at some of the quotes that I've put up in here, there's been Chief Performance Officers around there, but now we've raised this up to a new level. So the big question is, what really is a Chief Performance Officer? What does she do in an organization? Why would you want a Chief Performance Officer? Or why wouldn't you just do what a Chief Performance Officer really does? So, there's a whole lot of ways to think about this, but like it or not, for those of us that have lived through the data warehousing business intelligence evolution, we know that one of the best ways to get a successful project is to get business folks on board and get them excited about something. And if you've got all this fun stuff in the news here and you're kind of bringing this up to management, you make it a little better of a reception for what you're bringing forward. In fact, in January, I worked with a gentleman who was a vice president at an organization, and he made the proposal to his boss that he wanted to be the Chief Performance Officer for doing this, and he had to describe what he was doing. And he is now the Chief Performance Officer, and he's actually getting funding for projects that he wasn't able to get before. So let's talk a little bit about the CPO and what's really involved with it. It's a fairly simple concept, and for those of us that have been in this industry for a while, it's really not that, it's kind of common sense. But it's understanding a single point of focus for performance management in the organization. Now let me step back, performance management. I'm a consultant, so we're real good at making up buzzwords to get great billable hours out of you, but in the end, performance management is you can demystify it. It's really understanding the key performance indicators and finding a way to manage them in the organization. Does that require BI? Does it require data warehousing? Does it require predictive analytics? Yeah, absolutely. It requires all those different pieces out there. But it's understanding and having a single point of focus in your organization. And I bet you if you went back to your organization and said, who's responsible for the performance metrics, all the KPIs in your organization, you're going to have one of two answers. The CEO, because that's where it all kind of comes together at one point, or it's everybody's problem. Well, both of those are unacceptable. You know, if the CEO is the only one that cares about the metrics that are there, you know, he doesn't have the time to go and dig into these metrics. So you need somebody who's going to be a single point of focus for these metrics. Any of you have chief knowledge officers in your organization? If I asked that question 10 years ago, a lot of hands would be up. There was this chief knowledge management movement 10 years ago, and everybody had chief knowledge officers, and that term kind of faded away. But most of you are managing knowledge as an asset in the organization, and it got that C-level awareness that was required to really make a change in the organization. Well, that's what I'm talking about with this, is that you have some form of awareness at the top level. The second thing is cutting through the static in the data. I mean, it's kind of cliche to say there used to be not enough data, now there's too much data. Well, it's actually the truth. I mean, there's so much darn data out there, and figuring out what are the key performance indicators that drive your business that you need to deliver up to your management team so that they can better drive the ship, what's happening there, or do, like on the bullet here, a heads-up display. You know, I love to use the analogy of a jet fighter pilot that's flying along, and he gets his heads-up display about his altimeter and his, he gets his weapon systems and all these other things in there, but they're all being fed from thousands of operational metrics or systems that are there. And they're being fed where the fighter pilot can actually take action about what's going on. You know, it would be a shame if you had a fighter pilot flying along, and then they wanted to understand how high they were in altitude because there was a mountain in front of them. They had to drop a tape measure out the end and say, looks like I'm 10,000 feet off the ground. You need to react in real time. That's what a heads-up display is about for this. The technology's here right now. Tell them that I'm busy right now and I'll call back. Sorry, a cell phone rang. Data filtering and relevance. You know, this is kind of like cutting through the static in the data. You know, it'd be nice to say that I could go and take one of your peers in your industry and say, here's their KPIs, you measure the same thing, and magically you're going to be able to manage performance. Well, where's the competitive edge then? There's some relevance to your organization. Relevance being where are you in your marketplace? Are you in growth? Are you in acquisition mode? You know, your competitors may not be in that same mode as you. So understanding the metrics and how they're relevant to your organization is key for the Chief Performance Officer. It's about less is more with Chief Performance Officer as compared to just nice amount of reports for things. And the last thing is a COO role. I came up with this term during my academic life, and when I went to my advisor, you know, he said, well, that's the job of the COO. And my answer is absolutely. It is the job of the COO. Organizations have become so complex that the Chief Operating Officer is too busy keeping the lights on and getting product out the door to worry about performance. So in the end, who's responsible for performance in the organization? No one or everyone. The Chief Performance Officer needs to step up and own this information. Make or break their career in this. Think about what Obama did. Forget about the first person he put in charge who was a tax cheat, and she had to get pushed out and another person came in. But the person that's in there now, Mr. Zients, his whole job is managing the performance of the organization, understanding the metrics, and being able to make a major change in the organization. Imagine trying to do that in the federal government, understand the key performance indicators and change things. So a lot of our jobs will be easy compared to this. But creating that accountability is absolutely critical in this role. So that's kind of at a high level. What's Chief Performance Officer about? Well, you need to kind of bridge between what I call the what and the why zones. And the what zones are real easy. It's what you get out of your report.